Ladies and gentlemen, federal employees, today we're talking about 3 different strategies that you can use to make sure you never run out of money in retirement. Because here's the deal. Nobody wants to worry about that. Nobody wants to be that person that runs out of money or gets close to running out of money before they pass away. Nobody wants that. So here are 3 strategies we're going to go over to make sure you are never in that position. Now, if you are new here, so good to have you. My name is Dallin Hawes. I'm a financial planner who helps federal employees with this stuff and federal retirement all day long, and I absolutely love it. So let's dive right in. Again, there's a million strategies out there on the internet, but here are the 3 main ones, the most popular ones, and a lot of the strategies out there really fall under one of these 3 strategies. Okay, number one, this is probably the simplest strategy. There's certainly some downsides, but the simplest, and it is simply this: never spend your principal. Okay, let me show you kind of what that means. Let's say you have $500,000 in your TSP. Okay, the idea here is you never spend that $500,000. Okay, if you retire with $500,000, you never spend that $500,000. However, let's say that $500,000 grows to $520,000. Okay, you can spend that $20,000 that it grew to, and you just never touch the principal. Okay, that is certainly one strategy. Or you invest in dividend stocks, and you don't sell the stocks ever. You just spend the dividends. Or you invest in bonds, and you just spend the interest. There's lots of different ways of doing this, but the principle is the same. Okay, you don't touch the principal. You don't touch the principal. You only spend the earnings. However, the advantage of this is it's simple. And most people can execute. They're like, look, I just don't touch my principal. I just spend the earnings. The downside, however, is what if there's a bad year? What if you don't have any earnings one year? You may not have income that year. Which in retirement, having these big fluctuations of this year you have income, this year you don't, most people don't want that, right? Most people want a smooth retirement where they know what their income is going to be. They can plan their trips and the big things they want to do because they know what's going to happen. Okay, so that's the big downside of this, is there can be big ups and downs if you do rely on the strategy of when there's income, great, and when there's not so much. So that is the pros and cons of this. Again, it's simple, it's easy to execute, but again, there could be some big fluctuations in your income in retirement. That's that one. Next is the 4% rule, basically using a safe withdrawal rate. If you're not familiar with this, let me talk you through it. Long story short, they've done a bunch of math and studies and blah, 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 all that stuff, right? So to figure out how much is a reasonable amount to take out every year to never have to worry about running out of money, okay? And this is what they came up with. They said, hey, if in year one, if you withdraw 4% of whatever you had at retirement, okay, in year 1, if you withdraw 4%, and after that, you just start with the initial amount and you increase that amount by inflation every single year, the odds of you running out is very, very small. So let me kind of give you an example of what that means. Let's say you have $500,000, okay? $500,000, 500K. 4% of that is what? Well, it's 20,000, okay? So in year 1, we spend 20,000, okay? In year 2, if inflation was, let's say, 5%, you can increase that 20,000 by 5%. So now it's 21. Okay, and you increase this 21,000 again every single year by inflation. It keeps going up by inflation. So the 4% rule says, hey, you start at 4% and then you take that initial amount and you increase it with inflation for the rest of your life. So basically, if you have $500,000, your portfolio, your money can produce 20,000 a year, inflation adjusted for the rest of your life. That's what it's saying. Okay, so and that's the strategy: is use a safe withdrawal rate, something that you're confident you would never run that out in that way. Now, one of the big advantages of this strategy is it's relatively simple, right? And it produces steady income. It's basically 20K a year plus inflation for the rest of your life. That's steady, right? Now, what are the downsides? Well, one downside is, let's say your investments actually perform quite well. Well, 4%, if your investments are growing more than 4% per year, may be conservative. And maybe you actually could spend a lot more. It just depends, right? Or if your returns are terrible, maybe you could spend less, right? Now, the 4% rule is quite safe. So the odds of it being too much is quite low. But keep that in mind, right? Any one number, say withdrawal rate, there's always downsides. There's what if this happens, what if that happens. There's always things that come up. But it does produce steady income over retirement, which is what most people want. Okay? So that is that strategy. Next, let's talk about dynamic distribution. So this is a strategy that many people are using these days, and this is the core concept. They say, hey, look, let's say you start with $500,000 in retirement, okay? And let's say we want to start withdrawals at 5%, okay? So maybe higher than the 4%, maybe we're going to start at 5%, okay? So instead of 20K, we're going to start at 25, okay? At 25. However, if our money, our 500K, if it grows a lot, let's say it grows to 600K, then we're going to increase our withdrawal amounts a little bit as well because our money is growing so well. And we're going to have lots of extra, so let's increase the withdrawal, okay? That is part of this dynamic distribution strategy. Hey, if investments do really well, we're going to increase withdrawals over time. If investments don't do well, let's say it goes down to 400,000, right? Then we reduce our withdrawals for some time until things come back and until things grow and recover. That's the idea. Is you start with maybe a little bit more than the 4% rule, right? However, you adjust it up or down over time depending how investments do. If things do really well over time, you adjust it up. And if things don't do well over time, you adjust it down. Now, here's the deal. All of these strategies have pros, cons, ups, downs, everything in between. But here's the principle for you. I don't care what you use, as long as it matches your goals, you're comfortable with it, and you understand it. You've got to understand the strategy you're using, or you're not going to be able to follow in retirement. Okay? You've got to understand what you're doing. And here's the deal. In my experience, this dynamic distribution is actually what most people actually do in real life. Okay? In real life, even if someone is using the 4% rule, if they have, let's say, 10 years of exceptionally good returns and their money is worth way more than it was at retirement, they may say, oh, I think I'm going to take a little extra. I've got plenty, right? But if their investments are doing really bad, generally people kind of cut back. It's kind of what happens naturally just with people's emotions, right? So keep that in mind. Again, I don't care what you use, as long as you have a strategy that's a sound strategy that makes sense, right? And that works for you. Now, one thing I will say is these numbers I was using for the dynamic distribution, they're not the exact numbers. If you want to know more about the dynamic distribution, there's lots of articles and things online about that. I was just using some example numbers just to kind of get you an idea of what the strategy is. But these are not, don't go using these exact numbers, okay? Don't be using those exact numbers. It was just an example of kind of how the strategy works. So again, I don't care what you use. Just use something. Use something that you're comfortable with, you understand, that you can implement for the rest of your life and not have to worry about it. Because that's what we all want. We don't want to have to stress about money. We don't have to worry about running out, certainly, but we don't want to have to stress day to day. Come up with a strategy that's easy, you don't have to worry about, and that you can trust going forward for the rest of your life. So I hope that's helpful, though. If you have any follow-up questions, there's a link in the description below to submit questions, and we actually answer those questions on future episodes just like this. So I hope that's helpful. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you guys next time.